What are some examples of sales leaders that you respect?
Well, it's tough now that I work with him, because I used to always say Mark, because I've known him for so long.
You still can?
I know. So I will still say him, but it always, like, now that, he's one of our partners and our founding partner, I promise not kissing up to you, Mark. That's what I used to say before I was at stage 2. So Mark is somebody that I really respect. We have a lot of LPs that it's been interesting to start seeing as they're talking to our customers, starting to see some of the things that they're helping them with, has been interesting for me, because I haven't, for the past 2 years, or now plus, I guess, 7 years total, I haven't been an in-house operator. So seeing how some of those things have been changing has been great, as part of the stage 2 community.
Awesome. And I know you're kind of I'll call it your template or boilerplate. There's a lot of things that you go after, but speaking of Mark, maybe talk about maybe some of the confusion that you see with companies in the kind of, I'll say confusing PLG and enterprise.
Yeah. So on the PLG side, one of the things that we're, are you saying some of the things that we're seeing? Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah, just in general, just kind of the PLG motion and how that relates to, kind of the enterprise and different solutions, because I know a lot of times people get confused.
Yes. So a lot of our companies are PLG, which means, that they're basically, in a lot of cases, offering a freemium product, and finding folks that come in, sign up, and then at some point they're either gated, either they self-serve into upselling themselves, and or the company reaches out and says, hey, it looks like you've got 4 people using this. So we've got a lot of companies doing that and really helping them think through that, especially depending on who they're focused on. If their prospect is somebody, for one of the things, and Mark has a checklist on our site, if you go on, but one of the things that we talk about is who's actually the user and the decision maker, because it's the user in a PLG motion that typically finds you. But you have to make sure that user is somebody that would be searching for this and that would and that you offer something that would be interesting for them to use. In some cases, we have companies it doesn't really make sense. So I'll give you an example. It's one of the companies. It's a company called Percent Pledge, and they're one of our portfolio companies, and they're a platform to help companies facilitate both giving and volunteering. So helping companies give their time. There's a whole bunch of administrative crap behind the scenes. It's hard for folks, and they actually do all that for them. And they have been testing PLG. One of the challenges is that they typically sell to, when they're making that decision, it's an HR user, but it's a CFO a lot of the times that is, because it is part of the budget, deciding, yep, this is what we're working on. And they're not typically looking at, is there a giving platform we could use instead of administering our program, So, right. And there isn't a natural, we're going to come on. So they have been, at least for the HR person, they do have a way that they can run one thing, and they're testing that, but that might not be as relevant. They might find that they're just more of an enterprise sell, and that's the way it should run, rather than a company that has been focused on, hey, my end user is a developer, and developers are looking for, X, Y, and Z. That's how they're finding us in content. And then they start using the freemium product. And then once they want to upload their own data or they want to do something, that's when they actually have to pay.
True. Exactly. Good. So you get a foot in the door, and then you kind of ups, depending upon the offering, of course, but then, upsell from there.
Yeah. So it really is about thinking about the use case. I mean, there's so many. PLG has been a hot word, and it's certainly, as sales continue to change, and people get more and more immune to getting email messages, and we're thinking about, like, how are SDRs, what is the best use case for an SDR even, versus an AE actually reaching out and managing that book of business supported by ABM, account-based marketing. I think there's a lot of evolution that's happening there. But one of the things that we encourage companies is, let's really make sure there's a use case for PLG before we test it. because if your user isn't the person that's going to be finding this online and it's something that would be beneficial for them, then it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of time there.
Great. What about any mentors that you've had along the way and advice that you've received?
Yeah. I've been fortunate to work for some great mentors in both the founders and my companies, as well as, originally when I was at City Search, I remember the first time I didn't get promoted. I was up for the manager role against a peer of mine who I thought was great. I had been in my role longer. So of course I kind of took I've been doing this longer, I'm sure I'm going to get promoted. And at the time, my manager was Jeremy Liu, who has been a partner at Lightspeed for a long time now, but was at City Search, and he didn't promote me. And he gave me the feedback that, and it's feedback that I needed to hear of, hey, number one, like just the way you do it doesn't mean everybody should do it that way. And how many first time, sales managers do we see doing it that, right? This is how I sell. You should sell the exact way too. You've got to learn actually to separate methodology and be able to coach people. And number two, think about not just what's best for the salesperson, but actually what's best for the customer first, because whatever's best for the customer should be best for the company and for us.
Right.
So some great feedback. And then since then, he's been a mentor to me throughout my career, along with a lot of my VPs and founders like Tim O'Shaughnessy at Living Social. And so I've been fortunate to have that.
Awesome. That's great. What about if there's one or two things of advice that you would give your younger self?
Advice I would give my younger self. So one thing I think is make sure that you do, especially first of all, make sure a lot of times in sales, people think and then I want to be a manager. And that isn't necessarily the right career path for a lot of people. Yeah. You're usually making less money and spending and spending a lot more time doing other things. So first of all, make sure that you're really thinking about what do you love to do every day and what role do you get to do that in? Because there's a lot of other options around that. And then once you figure out what you want to do, seek out mentors, seek out ways, continue to educate yourself so that you can get there. Whatever you do, make sure that you're using a data-driven approach to it. It's really easy for us to make emotional decisions, but the reality is that data all day long is it's sitting right in front of you and it's going to tell you what you should be doing. So I wish, when I was younger, I probably was too emotional. I made some emotional decisions. I probably even did that in, thinking about my next job versus really thinking about what's the right fit for me. And, learning to be a more data-driven decision maker has been really good for me.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I mean, being a rep or global account manager, you get a great lifestyle, you make good money, you got flexibility, family balance, and
totally,
it can be pretty good. And sometimes you're a lot more valuable than some of the leadership. But anyway, here, so time flies when you're having fun. Tucker, maybe you can put up the 5-star things. We found out a week or so ago that in order to rank on podcasts, people need to go in under the Apple Podcast, scroll down to the bottom for reviews and put in 5-star in a comment. So Tucker has that coming in here. And we have a question here from Jennifer. When making the leap from in-house operator to founder to investor, what made you want to make the jump? What challenges did you experience and what did you learn? Great
question, Jennifer. Hi, I know her. So I think it's funny, I tell people, if you would have told me 5 years ago, you're going to be working at a venture capital firm and a partner, I would have been like, oh my God, no. Half the time I feel like people and I've certainly had folks on boards that I'm like, this isn't helpful advice. but I think being able to do it differently and actually be a resource to people has been helpful. What I would say is, so what made me want to make the jump is just staying, really continuing to think about where is my skill set and what am I passionate about. I had several folks, in my last couple say like, why don't you go be a CEO? Why don't you go be a COO at a big company? And I was like, well, because what I really like to do is understand the customer and coach people and drive revenue. Like that's actually what I like to do. And I don't want to be a founding CEO and have to go raise money and do a bunch of that stuff. That doesn't sound fun to me. So I think really, like you were just saying, Randy, on your, think about what you really want to be doing every day. For me, it was continuing to help earlier stage companies. So the way that I first did that was, on my own. I had a team and we were consulting, helping people do that. And then stage two just happened to be a fit for what for my background and what I was doing. I think the biggest challenge is you have to be okay with you don't know the answers, that you're still figuring things out. I think the hardest thing for me is I typically had a team, and then I was when I started my own company, I didn't at first, and I was both selling myself. I've usually only sold products, and then also trying to figure out how to implement. So I think you have to get used to. You're not, somebody else isn't setting your goals for you. You're actually trying to figure those things out, and really thinking about what is the value prop for you or for your company. But those are, I think some people are much more prefer to, hey, I want to just be in-house because I want to be in-house on this. I'm in-house. I'm really good at doing these things. And that's great. If you feel like you are an entrepreneur, just be okay to be out there and you're learning too.
Absolutely great. So we're going to kind of do these next couple quick. So Tim Rodwanski is at a cool company called Convertive. So he's basically asking around about the different KPIs. So early on, Tim, you probably missed it, but she is going to share with us kind of the whole, I call it a platform, but kind of diagnostic around kind of KPIs and kind of what they do across the portfolio companies, which I think will be fantastic. So I think that kind of answers that question, right, Mandy?
Yep. I'll share that PowerPoint, Tim, and it has
it's all a great reminder to
exactly what we ask them to report on to us each month.
They do that. Great. And then Ernie asked a couple of questions, but I think the poignant one would be really kind of how do you assess companies for product market fit?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many definitions out there of product market fit, as you guys probably know. So what we look at is, first, we just look at the customers that you've acquired and their activity or usage. In a lot of cases, that company may not have enough, they may not have all, especially if it's an annual agreement, they may not have all renewed yet. So what we're looking at is how active they are. How do you determine what should they be doing in your product, and are they doing it? So does it look like they're going to renew? We do want to see more than 5. You've got the 5 friends and family. So we want to see that we're starting to, that you've sold enough. So typically for us, it's companies between 500 and $1 million in ARR, because there's enough customers where, okay, enough folks have bought and then they're using it. And so therefore the use case seems to be resonating. We also do talk to customers as part of our diligence, but first as we're looking at the data, those are the things we want to see. And then we do look at, and are you starting to see that you're starting to get some kind of like consistency and actually signing those folks. So that's how we evaluate it.
Great. So Ernie and Tim, thank you so much. I'm going to try and wrap again, but we certainly love the questions. So Mandy, you've been awesome. We're going to take a break for a little bit for the holidays, and we're back January 4th with Bethany Meyer for episode number 105. She was a great operating executive and now does the board thing. She's chairman of the board at Box, on the board of Lamb Research, on the board of Sempra. on the board of Ambry and a bunch of other companies too. So she's definitely impressive and will offer fantastic insight. So for those watching, thank you so much. Feel free to share. SalesBricks, thanks for your sponsorship. Mandy, you've been awesome, and best wishes for the holidays. Thanks so much.